Hey everyone, just here with another video with regards to the Canadian housing market and why I think it's going to crash. Now, a lot of people have been, expressing, concern with regards to, they'll say things to the effect of like, how do you know it's going to crash? How do you know we're in a bubble? What defines a bubble? And you're going to hear a lot of people, they're going to say a lot of things that are, very technical. If you were to ask an economist or some sort of, market analyst or something, their views on why they think about anything, not just the real estate market in Canada, just anything, you'll get these very sophisticated, convoluted sort of reasons why they think the way they do. And they'll show you all kinds of, complicated charts and graphs and whatnot. But it's very simple. Why I think it's going to crash. And again, I don't think I'm the only one thinking this. A lot of people think this. And it comes down to one very basic concept. It comes down to, and I want you to remember this, because this is it. And don't let anybody tell you different, because if they're telling you different, it's either number one, they don't know what they're talking about, or number two, they're trying to sell you something. They're trying to make you feel that things are better than what they are because they have some sort of uh, motive. Like again, if you're going to talk to a real estate agent, they're going to tell you, oh yeah, it's the best time to buy. It's cheap right now, and so on and so forth. It's going to go. Everybody knows it. Real estate always goes up. They'll have all kinds of stories like that. But the concept you have to remember is people do not buy houses, they buy a payment. Okay, that's the key. That's it right there. There's no more to it than that. And I'll explain what I mean by that. Now, if you look at the Canadian statistics, and you can look these statistics up, just to verify what I'm saying. You don't have to take my word for it. You have to start off with look at what the average mortgage is in Canada. And if you look at, this screen here, you'll see Alberta, it's 243, British Columbia, it's 210, all the way down. So let's just say, and you have Ontario there with about 187, but it's roughly around $200,000. That's the average income in Canada. And to me, that's actually surprisingly low. I would have thought it would have been higher than that, especially with housing prices the way they are. But then what you have to look at is what's the average income of a Canadian, right? So you have to look at, okay, what is it they owe on and how much money do they make? Now, this is from, Statistics Canada. So this isn't something that, some sort of crackpot, website. This is straight from the government that has all the data on everything that goes on in Canada. If you look at the income in Canada, again, it's actually higher than I thought. And this is household income. So this is going to be, husband and wife working, or, whatever. There's some are single families, but it's the whole household. It's not just individuals. So if you look at somewhere like Ontario, it's 81,000. But you look at something like Newfoundland, it's 79. So it's very close. I would have thought that would have been a lot lower, but it's it's fairly decent. Then you have like Prince Edward Island at 73, and so on and so forth. So in Canada, the average household income is $80,940. That is the average income. There it is right there. Again, if you want to check for yourself, you can look at it. So what that says to me is you have an average mortgage of around 200,000, and you have an income of around 80 to 100,000. Let's say about 80, 85, whatever. You have other provinces like Northwest Territories is very high, which is I found very surprising. But that's usually because there's a lot of like scientists and whatnot up there looking for mining sort of things. That's usually a very specialized person that goes up there. And then you have, again, Alberta with one of the higher ones with over $100,000. But again, that's fairly reasonable. You have a $200,000 mortgage and you make about $100,000 a year. But you also have to look at the other debt that people have. Canadians' average debt load is now up to $22,081, right? So they're taking on a lot more consumer debt, right? So that's just the mortgage, the around $200,000 that they owe, but now they also owe other things. So what you have to look at is what, and like I was saying before, is people don't buy a house, they buy a payment. So if you're looking at the average house, the average mortgage in Canada is around $200,000. At 2.3%, that's roughly a mortgage that you'll get if you get a variable right now. Your monthly payment is going to be $876.14. Okay? That's what people can afford, a mortgage payment around that. Now, on top of that, there's property tax, there's insurances, so on and so forth. Plus, you have your food expenses and whatnot. But people can reasonably handle about $876.14 of a mortgage payment. Okay? And that's at, a monthly rate. Now, let's just say, for instance, so again, just keep in mind that they're paying close to $900, thereabouts, okay? Now, if you change the mortgage interest rate to, say, 4%, okay, and you calculate that, it goes up to $1,052. So roughly, just over, like maybe $150 more than what they're used to. Now, let's just say it goes up to 6%. Now you're up to about $1,280. You originally started off around $9. Now you're about, $1,300, getting around $1,300. So that's $400 more. You're talking about that's almost like almost a 50% increase in your mortgage payments. So what does that tell you? If you owe $200,000 and you could only afford about $900 in a mortgage payment, this is going to have to come down. This will have to come down. Let's look at $120,000. Yeah, so you're getting around 767 again. You're getting around that 900. Let's say it'll probably be like 135 or something like that. So we'll try 135. Yeah, so you're gonna get your mortgage would have to go down to 135 at 6% to be the same as it was at like 2.3%. So just right off the bat there, your house is going to have to fall like $45,000 minimum, right? So again, it's not rocket science. It's a very simple concept. If you only make so much an hour, or your salary is only so much a year, houses can't just keep going up. Like, there has to be a catalyst. There has to be money behind the market. And people say, well, the government or whatever, there's this strange kind of way of thinking. They think that the government controls interest rates. To a certain extent, they'll have some sort of influence on it, but they don't control it. It's an international thing. And I don't mean like an international conspiracy or anything like that whatsoever. It has to do with every government in the world. It doesn't matter if it's Canada, the United States, England, Japan, China, whoever. It doesn't matter who it is. They all want money. They want international money because governments need to build roads. They need to build schools. They need to build, highways, so on and so forth. So they compete for the money. Then there's the private sector, like Apple, IBM, Ford, General Motors, whoever. They need money too. And they all compete. It's called the crowding out effect. When the government starts getting more money than the private sector, they crowd out the private sector because they take most of the money. So what happens is, it's like any market. There's a price attached to it. So if you look at somebody like Donald Trump, what he wants to do right now, regardless of what you think of him, you like him, you don't like him, it doesn't matter. The point is if he makes good on what he's saying, he wants to rebuild America. He's already said that he wants to build, new airports in all the major cities. He wants to redo the subways. He wants to redo the highways, so on and so forth. So the United States is a huge economy, the biggest economy in the world. And again, whether or not you like the states or you don't like them, it doesn't matter. If he is legit in what he's saying, he's going to start issuing a lot of bonds. And it's as simple as this. He'll start off, maybe he'll start issuing bonds for 3%. If there's not much interest in people wanting them, like across the world, because some people, rich people will say, I'm not going to give you my money for 3%. He'll raise it to 4%. Still no takers, 5%, 6%. He's going to hit a percentage where it's going to be attractive to international investors. I don't know what that number is. I'm not going to try to pretend that I do. But when governments start taking these initiatives to rebuild infrastructure, that's when interest rates start going up. Now, I'm not saying governments haven't been doing that lately, but there was a huge effort in trying to bring down interest rates because what happened was the Western world wanted to get off of Middle East oil. Now, what happened was central banks really pushed, for lower interest rates because the oil in North America is very dirty, right? It takes a lot of money to refine it. And when you had high interest rates, it wasn't profitable to refine that oil. And again, this is something you can research this if you want, but this is how it works. Like say, for instance, Alberta, their oil it's tar sands, right? So the profit margins are very, very low. So if you had something like a 7% interest rate, you're not going to make any money off refining Alberta oil. But if it's like a 0.5% or 1%, yeah, then you can start making money because you can borrow the money, buy all the equipment, refine it, and then sell it for a profit. But when interest rates were too high, you couldn't make any money with North American oil. So that's why they really push for these really low interest rates. But what the problem is that they inadvertently created a giant housing bubble. Because what happened was the average consumer saw these really low interest rates and they started buying these really large houses for a fraction of the price that they were before when interest rates were higher. So they thought they were getting a deal. But then the herd mentality caught on and people just started buying houses. And as the housing price went up, they built more equity in their house. And what they did was they would get a line of credit. They would take that line of credit and they would start buying consumer products with that extra equity that they had in their house. So that's what created this whole, what people like to refer to as an artificial economy. Now, what you have to look at, you might say, okay, interest rates won't go to this percentage or that percentage. We don't really know. But if you do look at the trends of the Bank of Canada, the Bank of Canada boosts rate by a 0.25 point. Says economy now adjusted to lower oil prices. Excuse me. Now, you might say, okay, what's a 0.25 point? That's not a big deal. What the big deal is here is that this whole cash machine equity goose that laid the golden egg in people's houses is coming to an end. Like when I was working as a financial advisor in Calgary, I used to see it all the time. People would, because the market was so hot, this was like in the 2007, 2008, 2009, around that time when oil was really booming. People would buy a house, for like 600 grand. Then it would go up to 800. So they say, well, I got an extra $200,000 equity in here. Bank would give them maybe about 130, 140,000. So they would take it. They'd go buy a Mercedes, whatever the case may be. Then the house would go to $1 million. They say, hey, I bought the house for 600. I want to extend my line of credit, even further. So we give them another like $140,000, $150,000. I knew people that had lines of credit on their house over $1 million. I knew a guy, he bought a house for like $375,000, like in the early 90s, and it went up to like 2.1 million. He had a $1 million line of credit on his house, which he was going around buying everything under the sun. So that made the economy hot, was that people were spending the equity within their house. And that was the reason why they could do that, is because there was a constant lowering of rates. So as rates go down, and this goes back to what I was saying before, people don't buy the house, they buy the payment. So as rates go down, your housing price will go up. Because if a guy can only afford like $900 to $1,000 a month, when interest rates are say 10 or 15%, that's a heck of a lot different than if he can afford $1,000 a month when interest rates are down to 2%, right? And all you have to do is take a mortgage calculator to look at it. So if you had rates at 15%, okay, now you're paying $1,682 a month, right? And if you think that interest rates can't go to 15%, go look at what the rates were in 1982. They went up to about 21%, right? So it can happen. So it always comes down to the payment. Could you imagine paying $1,682 on a $135,000 mortgage? That's a lot of money. But like I said, if you want to look at what it was like in the 80s, early 80s, 21%, you're paying $2,280 a month for a $135,000 mortgage. When right now people are paying about $900 for a $200,000 mortgage. So that's what I'm saying, is that you have to look at the whole picture. This cannot go on, and the fact that rates are going up, even if it's just marginal, it doesn't matter. That the main important thing to take home from this is that because rates are no longer going down, there's not going to be any more equity in people's houses. So that's going to come to an end, because it was almost like a yearly ritual. People would come to the bank. My house went up, $300,000 or $400,000. I want my equity taken out. Increase my line of credit. They would refinance their houses nonstop, and the banks loved it because they made money off it. They want to keep you in debt. But what I'm saying is, the fact, even though it's just a quarter point going up, the fact is the well has run dry. People can no longer refinance anymore because there's not going to be any more new equity within their houses. Their housing prices will not go up. And again, I can't stress this enough. And don't listen to these guys who are these, highly sophisticated economists and whatnot, because they're going to show you charts and graphs about, okay, there's this and that, and this index curve says this, and they're going to show you all this technical analysis and whatnot. It's as simple as this: if you don't have the money, you can't buy anything. There's no two ways about it. So then a spiral effect takes place. All those people that were buying all that stuff on credit from their home equity loans, like the fancy cars, the boats, I used to see it on a daily basis. I knew a guy, he had like a $300,000 boat. So because he had a $300,000 boat, he bought a $80,000 SUV to pull it. He had a convertible Saab. He had I think he had like 4 or 5 cars, and then he had this yacht. And he was making good money in Calgary. He's making like $250 a year, and his wife was making $150 a year. But they were spending probably about $600,000 a year, right? So, but what would you do when you had a shortfall? Well, go to my line of credit. I'll increase my line of credit, and I'll pay, buy all this stuff. But he was spending a lot of money, and that wasn't the only guy. There's a lot of guys like that. And when you see rates going up even marginally, there's going to be no more well to draw from. You're not going to be able to do it. And you know, it's just the beginning of the end. You're probably going to see, you know, a couple spikes here and there, and you're going to hear the real estate agents and the mortgage brokers and whatnot saying, "Oh yeah, no, it's still good. You know, pay no attention to that guy behind the curtain. That you know, he's not making any sense." It's a very simple concept. If you don't have the money, you can't buy anything. If you have any questions or concerns, please leave them. Thank you.